Hi, this is Bernie Mayer. I am a professor of dispute resolution at the Werner Institute at Creighton University. And today I want to talk to you about framing and reframing. One of the key challenges in dealing with conflict is how to establish effective communications. And in particular, how to take what are often very hard, angry, positional, or unuseful ways in which people say things, and hear beneath all these layers to what the real genuine message is that needs to be discussed and needs to be talked about. And that is what we mean when we're talking about the reframing and framing challenge. So what is framing? Framing is a way in which people present their concerns, their issues, their ideas, their problems, their unhappiness. And people can frame things in very useful, helpful ways, or they can frame things in very unhelpful ways. And so part of the art of what we need to deal with in conflict is to try to frame our concerns in a useful, productive, helpful way. But that does not mean framing it in a way that is always nice or easy or unchallenging. It simply means framing an issue in a way that it has the greatest potential to be talked about in a productive manner. What is reframing? Reframing is taking a message that is presented in a very unhelpful or unproductive way or difficult way or toxic manner and restating it to the speaker in a way that we really recognize what is underneath all the different layers. We put their concerns, their ideas out there in constructive, positive terms, focusing on the underlying interest or message, but without some of the toxicity that surrounds it. There are a number of important framing problems that we tend to see. Let's just consider some of these. One significant problem in framing is the way in which people use language itself. And oftentimes people put in very toxic or value-laden words. They make demands instead of requests. They talk about thinking something is immoral and unethical rather than thinking that it is unwise. And so that's one of the problems we're often dealing with is the language itself. Another framing problem is that people tend to put things into positional or either-or language. It's either my way or the highway. It's either we do what's right for the children, or we give in to our own narcissistic need. We either cave in to evil enemies, or we stand up with righteousness. And that kind of positional or either-or language does not help enter us into a productive conversation. Another framing problem that we see is the global definition of problems. Instead of talking about a particular problem and how an organization is being run, we talk about our fundamental problems with the whole philosophy underlying the management of an organization, or that the whole place has to change. And it makes it very hard for people to constructively deal with the concerns they might have. And we also see the opposite problem. Sometimes people talk about very overly specific definitions of issues. I remember one time when I was a mediator in an organizational conflict where initially it seemed like people were talking about how they said good morning to each other. And of course, that was a very overly specific way of framing what was really a problem in respectful communication among people. Another problem we see with framing is that people often focus on what cannot be changed, everything that went wrong in the past, rather than what we can do to make things better in the future. The heart of reframing is the understanding that people have very important things to say that need to be heard, that they want to be heard, but that they wrap these messages in very unproductive ways often. And so the heart of what reframing is about is helping people say what they have to say in a way that helps others to hear it as constructively as possible. Our goal is not, in reframing, is not to take away the very often hard feelings or difficult messages people have to deliver, but to help them say it in a way that maximizes the likelihood it will be heard. Let's look at some examples of how this might work in practice. And in a way, each of you can just think of some of the hard statements that have been made to you that you've been reactive to in your lives, but that you could also think about, well, how can you listen to what is underneath a hard statement to the essential message that needs to be heard? So imagine you hear this statement from somebody who you have worked with in the past on a project at work. Hell will freeze over before I agree to work with you again. It was torture the last time we were on the same team, and I won't subject myself to your arrogance again. Now, our initial reaction to a statement like this might be to want to let the other person have it and give them a piece of our mind and stand up for ourselves, all of which are totally understandable, and we may have to find a way of saying that seems unfair to us, and it's not something that we want to have to subject ourselves to. However, let's just look at the statement itself for a moment. Consider two aspects of this statement. Take a look at this slide with the bullseye here. We can consider this a diagram of over almost every difficult or hard statement that people make in life. That there is what we could call the gem. And that is the real meaning of the statement that needs to be heard, that needs to be acknowledged, and that needs to be listened to. But that gem is wrapped in a lot of static that makes it hard to get to it. And in a way, the art of reframing is about removing that static so that we can really talk about the gem. But here is the key that we have to remember. The gem is not necessarily the nice part of the statement. So, for example, in this statement that I just read, part of the message is, I am angry, I don't like you, I didn't like working with you before, I don't know that I want to do it again, and I certainly don't want to have the kind of experience where I felt subject to your power before. Well, that's a hard message, but we can hear it and we can listen to it. But consider the static that makes it hard to do that. It's some very difficult language and words like arrogance, torture, hell will freeze over. Those are the things that shut us or other people down very quickly, and we can't hear the real message, even the hard message underneath it. The other thing that might make it hard is there is an implied threat here, and that makes it also hard for people to hear what is really being said. So think of reframing as the effort to get at the gem by removing some of the static. So how might we take a statement like that and reframe it? Consider the following effort. The statement might be reframed as, we had bad experiences working together, and neither of us want to repeat it. You did not like how I approached the project, or you as a team member, and you are obviously still really angry about it. I did not like what happened either. If we are going to work together again, we have to make sure that we find a way to ensure this experience is not repeated. Now, is that an effective reframing? Well, it might be, or it might not be. We can't know that in the abstract. We can only know it in terms of how it plays out in real life interaction with someone else. We might have gotten it right, but as the next slide shows, we might have missed something. What might have we missed? Well, we might have missed the intensity of the anger. It might be No, it's not just that we had a bad experience. It was horrible. It was one of the worst experiences I ever had in my life, and I am really still seriously annoyed about it. So we might have missed the intensity of it. We might have missed the fact that it's not a generalized thing about how we want to work in the workplace life in general, but it's specifically directed towards a particular person, maybe us. So we might have missed the fact that it wasn't that we just had a hard time working together. You're telling me you have a hard time working with me and how I work. And we might have missed the absolute determination expressed in this person not to work again in these circumstances. So while the reframing might have worked, it might not. We might have missed something. If so, we'll be able to tell that. How will we be able to tell it? Somehow or other, in our interaction, the other person will show it to us. They'll keep repeating the statement. Their energy will still be negative. They will still look very agitated. If so, we'll have to keep on working on it. So let's revisit the concept of reframing in terms of the different steps that we go through. And it's not that this always happens exactly in this sequence, but it tends to work something like this. The very first thing that happens in reframing, whether we're talking about reframing in terms of being the person to whom a statement is directed or acting as a third party trying to help two different people talk to each other, the very first step is to listen to the statement, to really hear what someone is saying, to work to understand the interest or the message that is embedded in the statement. And then the next thing we do is we try to ignore or remove the toxic language from the statement that makes it hard to hear the essential message. We then restate the message, including the real issue or interest, in as balanced or as productive a way as possible. And then we check it out with a person to see if we've gotten it right. If we have, we're ready to move on. If not, we may have to do some more work on it. Effective reframing has the following characteristics. Number one, it is interactive. It isn't something that we do on our own and other people say, oh, wow, that was a wonderful reframing. I'm really happy to move on now. It's a joint effort that we work with people about. We work together with people. Number two is iterative. That is to mean it usually takes several efforts at refining the reframing or the framing so that we really capture the message in a way that allows us to progress with the communication. Number three is transparent. We aren't trying to do something sneaky or hidden here. We're very open about the fact that we're trying to find a way of stating what they have to say so it really captures their meaning but allows us to talk about it. Number four is it's strategic. Not every single statement that somebody makes needs to be reframed. And number five, it has to be respectful. And that means we don't remove the essential, even the most unpleasant aspects of the speaker's message. Instead, what we're removing is the elements of the statement that make it hard to hear the message. Let's just take a look at this slide on a formula for joint problem-solving statements, because this is what reframing often leads to in problem solving, where there are two different parties. It can either be a third party or we could be one of the parties. One of the parties says something, that statement needs to be worked out and put on the table in as productive a way as possible. Then another party says something, that needs to be worked out and put on the table in as productive a way as possible. And then these two, in some sort of way, have to be joined so that we create a joint problem-solving statement that might sound like, how can the two of us work together on a project that we both care about, given that we have very different styles of work and different communication styles, but we want to be productive and respectful of what we each have to contribute, and we don't want to repeat the bad experiences we had in the past. That might work. If it does, it really allows people to go forward with a discussion that can be productive.